Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Today's episode is with Ryland Engelhart, who co-founded Kiss the Ground nonprofit and is a producer of the Kiss the Ground filmed, released on Netflix, and the executive producer of the award-winning sequel film Common Ground, which I just saw recently in Los Angeles. And he's been working for almost 20 years in health, wellness, and hospitality as the co-owner and prior mission fulfillment officer of the nationally recognized plant-based restaurants, both Cafe Gratitude and Gracias, Madre. And he's really a creative catalyst focused on cultural and ecological transformation. He speaks now and advocates for regenerative agriculture, sacred commerce, tools for building community, and the practice of being love. And I am just so delighted to welcome Ryland to the show. So welcome, Ryland.
Thank you, Yasmin. It's great to be here. We've danced a couple times to try to land this plane of conversation, and I'm glad that it's happening now. And I just love the gateways to awakening as your guiding tenet and intention and overarching theme. And I use the word awakening a lot in my work and what my intention is. And so I'm grateful to be here and to be sharing into the space of can we, as human beings, create awakening for a more beautiful world?
Yes, amen, amen. And it's so fun to have danced around the few moments before to get to this moment. And it's always perfect, though, And so I want to kick it off, Ryland, because you have just done so much with your career and your life, and you're really a steward of so many beautiful projects. But I want to talk a little bit about conscious capitalism, right? Because you're the founder of 2 plant-based restaurants, Cafe Gratitude, as well as Gracias Madre. And I'd love to sort of define, like, what is conscious business and sacred commerce? What does that mean to you? And how can businesses today think about purpose when it comes to their business?
Wonderful. Thank you. So, so to take people back into my journey, and my father and stepmother were the creators of, and I was, came within the first year of them starting their business and really helped grow and expand both Cafe Gratitude and Gracias Madre. And then, in a sense, me and my brother took over the company and really brought it from the Bay Area in 2010 to Los Angeles, and then really expanded it for a decade in Los Angeles, from 2010 11, and it's currently still happening. And if you haven't heard of Cafe Gratitude, it's a plant-based, and Gracias Madre, it's a plant-based, vegan, organic, whole foods restaurant chain that really focuses on gratitude as a practice, as a way of being. And that our idea of Cafe Gratitude and Gracias Madre both were, can we create environments of hospitality where we are bringing people in the door for the carrot of the food, but really the underlying purpose and intention is to infuse our culture with the practice of being grateful. Because what we've found and seen and understood is that, the Buddhists have a term called the hungry ghost, and that human beings, we have an aspect of ourselves that is insatiable, and we're always just wanting for more. And part of that leads to the dysfunction of culture, and part of that leads to the dysfunction of a planet that's being consumed down to its um, to its to its barren nature, to basically eating ourselves out of house and home, literally. We're yeah, I know I said we timeless, but it's the day after Earth Day, so I'm present to that. And so, yeah, that gratitude is this simple universal practice that bringing bringing the invisible into the visible, and bringing our attention to something, and in that attention going to that thing that becomes in our awareness full. Like we become rich, we become full, we become abundant, we become in fullness, great fullness for something that already exists, that's been invisible, but then it comes onto the screen of our awareness. And when we can be in praise and gratitude for that thing that is, we are in a state of wholeness. We are in a state of fulfillment. We are in a state of connected to what some may call divinity or God. And that gratitude is this holy grail, if you will, of practices that is so transformative and so beautiful and so universal, and yet can be uh, so out of our awareness and out of our practice to cultivate a practice of gratitude. And I guess in many circles that we probably uh, travel in, it's become and continues to become a theme so much. But yeah, I would just say that when we're grateful, it satiates the feeling of inadequacy, insufficiency, uh, uh, scarcity, and leaves us in a moment of wholeness, a moment where we become full and we can become a gift to others, to ourselves, to life. And so, Cafe Gratitude, that was a long tangent to get to. Cafe Gratitude was a space with an earnest mission to awaken people, remind people, inspire people to that our life is a picture of our mind, and what we put our attention on creates our experience. And when we're in the awareness of all that we have, all that is full, we live in that fullness, in that moment. And that informs the next moment and the next moment. And that is a choice where our attention is, what are we putting on the altar of our present moment? Can we put that which is in existence right now, that which we have? The Sufis said abundance can be simply had by consciously receiving what has already been given.
So, Ryland, this is so beautiful. I really feel just immersed in your worldview of sacred commerce and this like core tenet and value of gratitude. And just so people are aware, because I actually spent a lot of time at Cafe Gratitude, and some of the practical kind of ways of engaging with people that I really love and appreciate is, the way the menu is structured, the titles of each of the dishes, which evoke a sense of inquiry into the kind of parts of them of ourselves that are more sacred and divine, right? Like even just something like as the I am loving bowl, for example, or I don't even remember what some of them are. Like I am enough.
Yeah, I am whole. I am accepting. I am
Yes, yes.
welcoming. I am passionate. I am kind. I am eternal. Yeah, and yeah, it was a beautiful combination of sacredness and silliness, in that we were lighthearted and playful in our approach of offering a spiritual view of life inside of a restaurant, over plant-based organic food. And as you said, the menu was designed to be the medium or the muse to create this curiosity and this inquiry of in a new or a shifted view of life. And so, yes, everything on the menu is written as a I am statement, I am affirmation. So, the food items were described as food, but their titles were called, I am affirmation. So to get the macrobiotic bowl with, quinoa and kimchi and shredded kale and azuki beans and a beautiful parsley tahini dressing and teriyaki almonds and some kind of delicious sea palm seaweed or hajiki seaweed, you would say you get to say, and we would be playful and say you are whole, and people would say I'll just take the macrobiotic bowl, and we'd say I just the macrobiotic bowl please, and we took the sort of the approach of being, the sacred fool of playfulness as a great, open-hearted, sincere, but again, as I said, silly approach of reminding people that they are all these beautiful qualities. And if we think about all the stories that we have in our head about ourselves and all the things we say about ourselves, and to think that we don't start to believe those stories that we affirm in our head much of the day, it was our playful way to remind us, wow, we are living in the stories of our mind of what we say about ourselves, so much so, and can we playfully be an anecdote, or I mean no, what's the word, what's the remedy?
Antidote?
I guess the antidote is a remedy. Yeah. So an antidote or a playful way to remind us that, who we're being in life is a combination of our thoughts, speech, beliefs, actions, and attitudes. And we were playfully reminding people that, what are we thinking about ourselves? What are we saying about ourselves? Because that's going to lead to, who we're being and how we're showing up and how we relate to ourselves, and how we relate to what's possible in our lives. And so we were wanting to be this house of affirmation, house of championing people's greatness, seeing people's divinity even when they weren't seeing it themselves. And there was a poster. There was a poster at the entranceway of the Venice Cafe Gratitude that my friend artist John Morrow made that said, "Bring them all in. There's room for all of them in my heart." And it was Cafe Gratitude was a very unique expression, and it still is. But as all things over years and years, things change, and the sweetness and the purity of the original intention, well, it's still there. It was expressed at much deeper levels in the earlier years, but back to the question of sacred commerce or conscious capitalism. Our definition, I think there's lots of versions of that impulse, and our distinguishing definition for sacred commerce was, and back to your word awakening, or the word of your podcast, our goal of sacred commerce was, can we awaken the presence of love while doing business? Can we have the transaction of business be transformational, creating a transformation? In this case, could we acknowledge people such that they remember who they are, maybe just a little bit more? Can we can we practice being grateful together such that gratitude emerges, and in that gratitude some new impulse, some new thought, some new action might emerge based on going from a moment of scarcity to a moment of abundance in the in the dining interaction of having a salad and a smoothie. And so that was the intention. And it was definitely, it started in 2004, and we're in 24, so 20 years ago, 2 decades of a what we like to call it in our family a big foolish project, uh, which is actually comes from a Rumi quote: "Start some big foolish project like Noah." And I've actually just started a new consulting firm called bigfoolishproject.com. And again, it's playful, but sincere in that can we be lighthearted about our aspirations to change and make the world a better place? Being that we could never try, and we could see that it's an absurd thing to set out to do, but with a little bit of foolishness in creating a playfulness or an insignificance, it allows us to get into the game of maybe things that we would never think about trying otherwise.
Right, right. I love this so much. I mean, you said a lot, so I want to kind of double click on and reflect back, to our audience about some of the things that you share, which is like having a sense of humor feels like a big cornerstone of all the things that you do in this life, which is my favorite, kind of topic, because I have, interviewed close to 200 people now on the show and dived really deep in the world of consciousness and spirituality. And I sort of came to this conclusion. I said, the highest form of consciousness is having a sense of humor. It's the
Thank God,
right? It's like, yeah, right. It's just, there's so much seriousness in the space. And I think that people who are overly serious may miss the point, of this kind of path that we're all on, this life that we're in. So I so appreciate that. I grew up with a family that had a massive sense of humor. And I love the sort of juxtaposition of both humor and sincerity, right? Because humor doesn't mean necessarily, that you don't care about the thing. It's like there's care, but there's also a playfulness. And I love that. And you also spoke about business as a vehicle for the kind of personal and inner work, which I think a lot of business owners don't think about, right? Like I think the sort of mainstream consensus is that business is a vehicle for capitalism and growth and one metric. And we sort of forget that this whole life is really just an experience of our own evolution, and what better place to do that than through the business world. So I really love that you talk about these concepts like love and gratitude, because they're so powerful and they're so potent. And I think that there's like a quality of quantum in, like a quantum sort of movement that moves from the business into the real world, right? Into our families, into our relationships. So it is such an important place for us to focus on this inner work. I have so much more to say about the Big Foolish Project as well. I love that so much. But I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this new kind of topic or world that you've spent so much of the last several years on, or more than the last several years, but on regenerative agriculture, and specifically Kiss the Ground, as well as Common Ground, which is the new film sequel to Kiss the Ground. But there's also a Kiss the Ground nonprofit. So I'd love for you to tell us, like, what's the mission of Kiss the Ground? What inspired the creation of it? And what's the impact that Kiss the Ground has had?
Beautiful. Thank you. So let's see. So Kiss the Ground, and just because we've been touching on the Rumi influence on my family, that start some big foolish project like Noah as a Rumi quote. Also, Kiss the Ground is inspired by a Rumi quote, which says, "Let the beauty we love be all that we do. There's hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground." And yeah, kissing the ground, there's so much there to unpack. On one sense, it's just simply articulating an affectionate action towards our mother, Earth. And then on another deeper, maybe more nuanced level, humility. To kiss the ground, we must kneel. And when we're truly, I'll just speak for myself, when I am truly humbled and humble and know that I am just a fragment of this complex universe, and I know nothing, and I can be in the surrender of the vastness, and I can get out of my own way, and I'm not pretending to be something that I'm not trying to put up some veneer, is when I'm most connected to God, most fulfilled, most in service, most joyful, most elated, most connected. And so when we kneel and we're in that space of supplication and just uh, surrender, is when we can receive the greatest knowledge, understanding, and experience of who we are and where we come from and who we belong to. And so, yeah, Kiss the Ground is, you know, when I was 19 years old, my parents took me to drink medicine with the Santa Daime Church in the Redwoods in the Marin Headlands. And we drank ayahuasca. And at 19 years old, I was coming out of college, or I mean, I didn't go to college. I had a lot of learning disabilities. I was reading at a fifth grade level. Coming out of high school, I had tried to become, to become a pro snowboarder, but ultimately I was afraid that I wasn't smart enough to sort of evolve into the adult life. And I was at the time living in San Francisco, working at a .com company in the emerging 2008 .com boom in San Francisco, but I was not working as a programmer or something cool. I was like the maintenance guy filling up uh, the kitchenette with crystal geysers and bags of Doritos from Costco. And I went with my parents and we drank medicine, and I was kind of asking for what my life was for, and what was my next step, what can I do, how can I be of service. And this experience of drinking the medicine brought me to my knees at the most humbled and shaken and shattered experience of just shaken and shattered because of my resistance to allowing this experience to unfold, which felt out of control. And in my experience, and finally in the surrender, on my knees weeping, I opened up to an experience of the mother, this entity, this presence of the earth, and this umbilical cord of energy pulsing from her into my heart, and having that pulse communicate so much uh, love and gratitude, and just this feeling of being home, and this feeling of just awe, and just so grateful to be in this relationship and having this moment, and asking, you know, and feeling her ask for my service and my devotion and uh, my care, and to be a protector of the earth. Not that these were the exact words, but this was the sentiment, the feeling. And I just wept with the honor of that calling, or that asking, or that communication. And so that was my first kiss the ground moment. But then it's not a decade and a half later, when I've been working within Cafe Gratitude, serving plant-based food, and being an advocate for gratitude, and healthy lifestyle, and wellness, and food as medicine, and conscious communication, and conscious capitalism, and being this sort of embodiment of all these things. And that's always what I've always been, this uh, this I've considered my work in the restaurants. It was like a tableside ministry of embodying love and gratitude as the thing that I could bring into the present moment, and touch and move and inspire people the through the expression of communication. And that that was a part of it, but again, not directly in this explicit care for the earth. And then I was in New Zealand, again, I think 13 years after that first ayahuasca experience, and I was there at a health and wellness conference, and there was a panel discussion called "Can Human Beings Sustain Life on Planet Earth?" And there was 5 out of the 6 experts that said no, and the 6th expert, this guy by the name of Graham Sate, says what they're saying is true. We can't sustain, but we can regenerate. We can heal the brokenness that we've created. Human beings have been a destructive presence on this planet. But if we knew our right relationship and right role, and the way that we, do agriculture, which is potentially the largest and most destructive system on the planet, but could become the great redeemer. And he articulated in 5 minutes the way that photosynthesis works, and the way that grasses, trees, and plants pull carbon out of the atmosphere. Of course, we knew that, and they make oxygen for us to breathe. But what I didn't understand is that they take 60 or 30, depending on the plant, tree, or situation, of carbon that is sequestered out of the atmosphere, and they send that into their root system and feed microorganisms in the soil. And in that that sending those carbon sugars into the soil through the root exudates and feeding microorganisms, and those microorganisms become carbon-based life forms, and that becomes carbon stored in the soil. And that is this potential carbon pump that is nature, of 500 million years of technology, perfectly designed to balance the climate, and to allow for, it's actually, when plants came out of the oceans and came onto land, and the plants, microorganisms, then created this living cover over the the earth, that wasn't that at the time was just rock and water. And then as plants emerged, that actually led to a 90 or so percent of drawdown of these greenhouse gases that were had the planet be mostly uninhabitable for most life as we know it today. So the mechanism of photosynthesis as a carbon pump, as a balancing mechanism, has balanced the climate multiple times, or created a livable homeostasis planet for the amount of biodiversity that exists today. And I was, as a sort of an arrogant Southern California sacred commerce expert, sustainability expert, raw food running restaurant guy, was like, wait, how did I not know this? And I've been a promoter of organic food and all things sustainability, wellness, climate solutions, blah blah blah, and I had no idea that there was this potential distinction and process and energy flow called carbon sequestration. And that when we start pulling the carbon out of the atmosphere and putting it back into the soils, we heal those broken soils. We put the carbon glues back in it, which actually creates this healthy ecosystem for life to thrive, biodiversity to thrive, nutrient exchange to take place, which also leads to healthy, nutrient dense foods. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we're talking about there's a solution to balancing the climate, producing healthy food, allowing for water to infiltrate back into the soil and recharge the aquifers. In creating biodiversity below the ground, which then creates, the conditions for biodiversity above the ground. It was just this idea whose time had come. Regeneration was this concept, this good news that was kind of like, love is possible. Love is, and it's an action. It's a process. It's a relationship between humans and the earth that could articulate this sort of concept of reciprocity, or this concept of interconnection, or this context of how do we love and get along. And here was this very scientific process of regeneration of soil and land and biodiversity and ecosystem and flora and fauna that I was seeing as this trophic cascade of, when you get this one system in service to nature's design, my God, the potential is infinite. It literally gave a horizon of possibility and hope and a pathway to follow towards life getting better in 7 generations versus worse. And that was compelling in a world where there's kind of not a lot of good news or a lot of solutions that intuitively we feel into and go, oh wow, that is right, that is gonna work, that is healthy, that is healing, that is wholesome, that's true. We see a lot of technology that is, could be helpful, but we don't even know what the ancillary, unintended consequences are of that. And yet here's this thing that is spiritually connected, grounded in nature's design and principle, which we as human beings are nature. There is no distinction. We are of the earth. We come from the earth. Human, humus, the same. They come from the same Latin root, hum, of and for the earth. And so I know I've gone on a tangent, but yeah, I don't know.
No, it's great. It's great, Ryland. You said so many things, and I think what's so powerful is that there is a solution now to what we're facing in the world of agriculture and food ecosystems and water and irrigation. And so I'm really curious if you could share with our audience, how Kiss the Ground as a nonprofit, and also kind of as the film, right, which really provided a big source of education for the mainstream. But how did Kiss the Ground support and empower farmers to transition to these regenerative farming practices? And like, what resources are available right now to assist them in this process and transition? What have you seen worked well? What have you seen as some of the challenges?
Yeah, thanks for bringing it back down to the ground. um, yes. So Kiss the Ground, we are a education advocacy nonprofit started in my garage, and essentially our big mission was, back to your word, awakening people to the possibilities of regeneration. So we are at the top of the funnel, bringing the awareness of that this idea is possible, that there is a way to go. And specifically, how do we elevate those that have gone before and actually succeeded in this journey? How do we elevate their story to such a way that provides the credibility and the confidence for people to follow versus, some airy fairy idea, that came out of Mr. Gratitude's mouth. Me. So that's where it started. Was the guy who I met in New Zealand. The first thing I did, I started bringing him and having him speak in front of the most influential groups of people that I could put together. Then we thought, all right, well, we're not going to be able to just get people to travel where we want them to do and speak in front of groups. So what we decided is, why don't we create content? And this is, way before the world went to where everything was, content creation. But we thought, how do we create content that will give the awakening that I had in New Zealand, that regeneration is possible? How do I give that awakening to others? And I thought, well, let's just start creating content that could potentially articulate in a beautiful, honest, open, inspiring way. And again, we also, this is kind of a thread that comes through everything from the restaurants into Kiss the Ground. We've always approached transformation in the direction of the Buckminster Fuller approach or quote, which says, let's create something that makes the old thing obsolete versus pointing fingers, yelling, diminishing, devaluing, blaming, judging, shaming. We said, let's show this more beautiful world that's possible through exemplifying what is happening in the regenerative agriculture space and having those stories be really well known. You've probably seen that meme on the internet where there's a guy dancing at a music festival and he's kind of awkward and a little bit goofy looking. And then somebody comes and is just the second guy and he's validating and saying, this guy's having fun. This guy's liberating himself. This guy's having a blast. And he creates this movement around this guy who was sort of a lone pioneer, in his unique little space doing his thing, but no one was really glomming on. And so Kiss the Ground has been the second guy validating and elevating the stories of those that are the pioneering leaders, farmers, ranchers, indigenous leaders who are holding this philosophy and practice in their own context. And how do we have their story and their reality be known such that others can follow? And so, the organization started out in my garage making short form content. We ended up partnering with Josh and Rebecca Tikal, the filmmakers, the directors of Kiss the Ground, and then the sequel Common Ground, and really enrolled them in the vision of that this was the most important story and movement and solution that the world had at its fingertips in this now moment. And there was an opportunity to tell this story and give this awakening worldwide. And, that started with 3 people in my living room, and has now led to over 10 million people seeing the first film, and uh, and over 200 million acres that is now being consulted on and supported in the transition towards regenerative agriculture through just the entity Understanding Ag, the outfit that Gabe Brown, Alan Williams, Ray Archuleta, and others who were featured in the films. Their business and their impact has been just remarkable, like world changing, and that just in the United States, there's 34 to 35 million acres that are in transition and being guided by this group, and that's 5 times what the organic acreage is of land in the that's taken 40 or 50 years to transition. So it's the scale to which regenerative agriculture uh, is connecting and is being adopted is almost overwhelming and almost scary, because the fear is it gets the halo becomes adopted and turned into just a great new marketing term, and it ultimately doesn't turn into anything, or I wanted to say anything, but the integrity and the intention of it is lost in the marketing opportunity that we've created for this term and this distinction and this movement.
Mm. Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations, Ryland. That's that's quite the output. That's just you probably have a very incredible karma now with Mother Earth from this lifetime. That's just so powerful. I didn't think I was aware of that level of impact and the numbers that you've reached. So wow, congrats. And tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about.
and
Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
and I just want to just to clarify, it's not us. We've been the catalyst for the story and the elevation, and then we do a lot of facilitation of here's the story or here's the awakening, for people, and then how do we hold people's hands, people who are in leadership roles in government, in business, who have their regenerative awakening, and then how do we connect to them, to the right practitioners, the right leaders in the movement, to help them be able to go down the path to make lasting impact in supply chain, in employee education, in bringing a new product to market, to helping the USDA implement a new training program for their faculty, such that they can get the best in class education that hasn't made it into the USDA's conservation programs of agricultural training. So we now have these assets that are communicating this message, getting people excited, and then how do we walk people through that transition of understanding how they could implement it into their own context, such that they could actually make a difference.
Mm,
And again, movement and ecosystem engineers or ecosystem uh, mycelium who are connecting and building the right pieces, the right messengers to the right practitioners, to the right, financing, really how do we move these pieces such that things and projects can emerge.
right, right, right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, of course. And in spearheading something like this, it really takes a village. I know that there's so many people involved in all the pieces, and it's so awesome though that you're, kind of one of the original catalysts of the, moving the energy, bringing people together, creating the bridge, kind of igniting the fire of possibility. So I just so appreciate that in you. So I would love to just talk a little bit about Common Ground. So it's the sequel to Kiss the Ground. What is the message of Common Ground? Why did you decide to create this sequel? And what do you hope people to take action on? What do you hope that they're going to do when they watch the film?
Yeah, I think the one of the biggest things that I hope to do with everything that I do is leaving people inspired that there is something better possible, and that there we're not we're not apathetic, and we're not hopeless, and that there is a way forward. And so, when people watch Common Ground, the film, the name Common Ground, it's a unifying message of urban and rural, black and white, indigenous. It has voices from all different communities that are speaking and singing one song, maybe with different lyrics and maybe different harmonies, but they're speaking this uh, relationship to nature and a way to work with nature to specifically farm and ranch in a way where nature can get healthier under human care and management, and that is happening on some pretty large scales, and exemplifies that our food system and the idea that we, how are we going to feed the world of 7 to 10 billion people on the planet, and that we need, all this, chemicals and mechanization and, synthetic fertility. It really peels back the curtain of that narrative and shows that we can grow an abundant amount of food, and that we actually can make farmers a lot more money, and it's a lot more profitable, because there's actually the biggest expense of farmers is the seed, the fertility, and the insecticide, pesticide, the inputs. And if we can get our soils healthy, then we can reduce those dependencies and those costs. And there's one farmer in the film, Rick Clark, who has a 7,000 acre farm in Indiana, who has gone to organic no-till, organic regenerative no-till, where he's regenerating his soil, producing food at the scale of 7,000 acres, and he's not using any synthetic inputs, and he's not using any synthetic herbicides or pesticides. And he's saving $2 million a year because of the reduction of those input costs, which ultimately scaled across the country to the similar scale size grain farmers, on an average of 1,000 acres per farm, could save them $1 million a year, which could lead to the infusion of $150 billion back into rural America, while producing an insane amount of nutrient dense, healthy, clean food coming into the cities and helping our, epidemic of human health crises that we're facing, that a lot is being driven through the malnourishment and the insufficiently the insufficient nutritional dense food that we're mostly consuming. And obviously that's a way oversimplification. There's so many other factors, but as a primary tenet, that public health doesn't start in the doctor's office or the hospital. Public health starts in the soil, on the farm. Food is medicine. Healthy food comes from healthy soil, and healthy soil to healthy food to healthy plants to healthy animals to healthy people is something that intuitively we know is true, and yet we just haven't aligned our values to make that happen. And so this film really shows that we can make that happen, that there is things happening. This movement is growing. There is labels that are articulating regenerative food coming into the grocery store. There are regenerative farms in every state and every region of the country. And there's an opportunity to really become more health sovereign and having more dominion over our health through seeing food as medicine and having, food coming from these producers coming to our plates, coming to, that a healthy ecosystem on the land is a healthy ecosystem in our bodies, and that direct connection. And, the film also shows the huge corruption and bought and sold science of chemical ag business and chemical seed, and the complex of pharmaceutical and big ag, and the combination of those industries, and how much they have co-opted the governing agencies that are supposed to protect the public from chemicals and from things that are not healthy, but yet those agencies have been co-opted co-opted and bought and sold. And it goes all the way into our education, it goes all the way into the USDA, it goes all the way into the EPA, and it exposes that. But it also shows that there's this movement of people who are going in a different direction, and that it's working in that direction, and that we can support that movement, and we can, make our plate, we can make one quarter of our plate, something that's coming from a regenerative farm and ranch. And if we are eating, one or two primary ingredients, that's one way that we can actually really invest in this regenerative future, not only for the land, but also for our bodies. And so the film, really is a rally call, a cavalry call for everyone to understand the solution, understand the problem, and take dominion over our food choices through understanding that there is regenerative ag happening all over. And let's not only support it individually, but also we edify what we love, we edify what we admire, and we haven't done much edification of farmers and the people who are growing our food, and the people who are now not only growing our food, but also protecting and restoring ecosystems. And that's a really cool thing that we can all get behind.
Yes. Yes. Wow. So much to unpack there. I'm so grateful that you're spearheading and kind of collaborating with and bringing this to the surface for the mainstream to really recognize and understand what's happening with big ag and what's happening with, all the decisions we're making that have not really taken into account the holistic perspective of Earth, the holistic perspective of what it is to be human, right? That we so much like become a lot of what we eat, right? So there's chemicals in the food and in the soil. There's an accounting ledger of energy on the planet, and I think when we borrow against that energy, it comes to collect with interest, and that's playing out. So I could talk to you for hours, Ryland. You're so fascinating, but we're unfortunately coming to time. So wanted to wrap it up with one last question about what has surprised you the most? Looking back on your journey, what it could be about farming, it could be about conscious business, it could be about life. But what has surprised you the most?
How powerful the energy of our intention. If I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. It's hard to even classify me as who I am and what I do, but uh, I've made miracles happen. And so what surprised me is when we commit fully with wholehearted, energetic commitment and passion and love towards something, and we really what surprised me is how much transformation can happen through energized, embodied communication about an idea or a vision, how much that can actually transfer, impact, and impress upon consciousness and the world.
Mm. Wow, I love that so much. I love energize, catalyze, intention about an idea. It's just like mixing everything we need, the ingredients to like really drive the energy forward. I love that. And I also, someone just told me this about being a jack of all trades because I feel this, similarly. The quote that oftentimes is not in culture is a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So, yeah. So as we can see,
Yeah, and I think just to ground that last statement of energy, I've been practicing. How do we show up like the sunshine? If we show up as the sunshine, and that's going to be different in every situation, but if we are a radiant light of helpfulness, supporting growth, warmth, luminosity, generosity, unconditionality, these are expressions of light, how the sun shows up on earth every day. And yeah,
it's beautiful.
how do we show up like the energy of the sun? And it's a practice. And it's the practice that I've taken on consciously and unconsciously at times. And I'm surprised how far it's taken me.
That's beautiful. I love that analogy. I'm going to use that. That's so sweet. And Ryland, where can people find you? Are there any resources that you can point folks to in order to learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kiss the Ground, I'm one of the founders of Kiss the Ground. I'm no longer working in the day-to-day of it, but kisstheground.com. Please check us out there. We have amazing amount of free resources, classes around, how you could get involved in the regenerative movement and being a regenerative advocate, and even, how to be a regenerative gardener. And then we also are working with companies on helping companies transition into the regenerative space and helping people navigate that authentically. So we're loving partnerships for brands that want to get into the regenerative space. Um, and and then as far as me personally, I've just stepped into a new role as a consultant with a back to what we said in the beginning. My new website is bigfoolishproject.com, and I help people catalyze big foolish projects that are about making the world a more beautiful place. And so that's a brand new venture, but it's ultimately what I've done over 2 decades with, multiple different, Kiss the Ground, the films, Cafe Gratitude, Gracias, Madre, how to build businesses, but also movements and shifts in consciousness. And so, check that out, bigfoolishproject.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram, love being Ryland, because I'm a love being and I love being Ryland. And so you can check me out there. And then also, my newest venture is I moved to Texas to work with my sister on a project called Sovereignty Ranch, which is a regenerative farm and ranch that's also a destination restaurant, brewery, and event center. And so we're in the development stage of that. But we already have been hosting events. We just had 350 people for the eclipse, an event called The Confluence, which was a combination of health freedom, food sovereignty, regenerative agriculture, spirituality, and wellness sort of festival. So we have an epic space in the Hill Country in Texas, 2 hours from Austin, 1 hour from San Antonio. And so we're hosting different kinds of content, different kinds of courses, different kinds of events here that are all based on how we enrich human consciousness into practice such that we can be stewards of a more beautiful world.
Wow, amazing, amazing. That's so cool. I hope to come down there and check out one of your gatherings at the Sovereignty Ranch. That sounds amazing. So thank you so.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you
Oh,
for being a vessel for so much beauty to be unleashed and shared with so many people around the world. And I hope this conversation, as we shared in the beginning, touched, moved, and inspired people in a little or big way.
mm.
And thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ryland. This was so lovely. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about conscious business practices and regenerative agriculture and all about the Kiss the Ground Foundation, our nonprofit. And you can tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again. What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self-mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed. And you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead.